Okay, so we love it when you send in stuff, and um, this one's really cool. I mean, this exposing and attacking the opponent's soft flank, or turning strategy, as it's called in the 33 strategies of war. This is like I don't know, it feels kind of sneaky, and I like that. I think we can all learn something from this. So let's dive in and really figure out how this whole idea of finding weaknesses can actually be the best way to get what you want.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. We're not talking about brute force here.
Yeah.
This is not about charging into the strongest point. It's about being smart about it.
Yeah.
It's about really thinking like, okay, where are they weak? Where are they not expecting an attack? And then focusing your energy there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're going to see how that can be way more effective than just, going head to head.
Okay, so this idea of the soft flank, it makes sense, but I guess the question is, why is it actually more powerful than, just meeting them head on at their strongest point? Like, what makes this so special?
Okay, so think about it this way. When you hit somebody at their weakest point, right?
Hmm.
And not just that they're weaker there, it's the surprise. It's like they're not expecting it. And that can really mess with them mentally.
Yeah.
They start to doubt themselves. They have to like scramble their resources around. And that might even weaken their strong points too. It's kind of like, you know how a dam can have a little crack in it? And it
Right.
might not seem like a big deal at first, but then the whole thing can burst.
Right.
And then practically speaking, you're not wasting your energy. Why would you like go all out against their best defense when you can just use a little bit of effort
Hmm.
on their weak spot and get the same result or even better?
Yeah, I totally get it. Like in a negotiation, sometimes if you're stuck, you can find like a smaller thing to agree on, and then suddenly everything else is easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk about Hannibal at the Battle of Cannae. I mean, this is like classic turning strategy. But for people who aren't like military history experts, what happened there?
All right, so picture this. It's 216 BC, right? Rome has this massive army, way bigger than Hannibal's. And they're like, we got this.
Yeah.
They're totally confident. They've got the numbers, they've got the training, and they think they're just going to crush Hannibal. Like, that's their whole plan. Just charge straight in and overwhelm them. That's what they're good at.
And Hannibal, he's outnumbered, right? But he sees how predictable they are. He's like,
Yeah.
okay, I can use this.
Right. He's like, okay, they're strong, but they're also kind of dumb. You know, they're only going to come at me one way, so let's set a trap. So he sets up his troops in a way that makes his center look weak.
Yeah.
And then when the Romans attack, he starts to retreat.
Like a fake retreat.
Exactly, a fake retreat, like, come and get me. And the Romans, they see this and they're like, yes, this is too easy. They fall for it completely.
And then what about their flanks? What happens on the sides?
Okay, so Hannibal had his best cavalry, like his horsemen on the sides, just waiting. And while the Romans are all bunched up attacking the center, Hannibal's cavalry, they sweep around and attack them from both sides.
So the Romans are like trapped.
Completely trapped. They're surrounded. And it's a total disaster for them. I mean, it was brilliant. Hannibal knew exactly how they would react, and he used their own strength against them.
Wow. So they were so focused on that perceived weakness in the center that they completely forgot about their sides. It's like they had tunnel vision. And the lesson here is, even if you're super strong, if you only do things one way and you forget about your weaknesses, someone smart can come along and take you down.
Exactly. They didn't even think about it. They were so sure they were going to win that they just walked right into the trap.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bunch of centuries to Mao Zedong and his guerrilla warfare tactics. This is totally different, right? He's up against this huge, powerful enemy.
Yeah, totally different situation. I
Yeah.
mean, Mao's forces were like way outnumbered by the Nationalist Army. They had fewer soldiers, fewer weapons, less everything. If he tried to fight them head on, it would have been a total massacre. No chance.
So what did he do?
He had to be smart about it. He couldn't win in a traditional battle, so he had to find another way. He knew the Nationalist Army was strong, but he also knew they had weaknesses. Like they had to control a huge area, they had these long supply lines, and their troops were spread out all over the place.
So he's looking for those soft flanks again, those weak points.
Exactly. And he starts attacking those weaknesses. He doesn't go after their main force. He focuses on disrupting their supplies, he ambushes small groups of soldiers, and he always tries to fight them in places where their bigger army is actually a disadvantage.
So it's not about winning big battles. It's about wearing them down slowly.
It's like death by a thousand cuts.
Yeah.
You know, he's constantly hitting them where it hurts, attacking their supply lines, attacking their morale, just making it really hard for them to operate. And eventually they can't keep up.
And it worked. The communists won, even though they were much weaker on paper. So again, it's about exploiting those weaknesses, those soft flanks.
You got it. It's about being strategic and finding the best way to win even when you're not the strongest.
Okay, so let's bring this into the modern world with some business examples. The source talks about Tesla and Airbnb. Let's start with Tesla. What was the car industry like before Tesla came along?
It was dominated by these giant companies, right? Like
Yeah.
Ford and GM and Toyota. They had been around forever. They had tons of experience. They had these huge factories and dealer networks, and everybody knew their brands. And they were all about gasoline engines. That was their
See,
thing.
electric cars were like a joke to them back then.
Yeah, they didn't really take them seriously. They were like, yeah, electric cars, whatever. They thought it was a tiny little market that wasn't going to bother them.
So where did Tesla see an opportunity? Where was the soft flank in this giant industry?
Well, they didn't try to compete head-on with gasoline cars. They were like, okay, everybody's doing that. We're going to do something different. So they focused all their energy on electric vehicles. And not just on the cars themselves, but on the whole experience, like building charging stations, selling cars directly to customers without dealerships, and doing software updates over the air, stuff the big companies weren't even thinking about.
So they were innovating in all these areas that the big companies had ignored.
Exactly. They saw a gap in the market and they went for it. And by the time the big companies realized, oh, hey, electric cars are actually a thing, Tesla was already way ahead.
They had that first mover advantage. They were the cool kids on the block.
Exactly. And the big companies are still trying to catch up.
So that's another great example of finding that weak spot and then just dominating it before anyone else realizes what's happening.
You got it. It's about being ahead of the curve, seeing the future before everyone else.
Okay, let's talk about Airbnb. How did they shake up the hotel industry?
Okay, so hotels, right? They're all about owning or managing these big properties with lots of rooms. And Airbnb, they came along and they were like, wait a minute, what about all these people with spare rooms or empty apartments? They could rent those out too. So they created this platform where regular people could become hosts and rent out their spaces.
So they're not building hotels. They're like unlocking all this extra space that was just sitting there.
Exactly. And they were targeting a different kind of customer too. People who wanted something more unique, more affordable, maybe in a neighborhood that didn't have a lot of hotels.
And what did the big hotel chains think about all this?
And at first they didn't take it seriously. They were like, oh, this is cute. A few people renting out their spare rooms, whatever.
Right.
They didn't see it as a threat.
But they were wrong.
Big time wrong. Airbnb exploded. People loved it. And suddenly the hotel industry was like, wait a minute, what's happening here? We're losing customers. But it was too late. Airbnb had already changed the game.
Wow. So they found another soft flank, a gap in the market, and they exploited it perfectly.
That's the key. Finding those opportunities that everyone else is missing.
Okay, so now for our listener out there who's facing their own challenges, how can they apply this turning strategy in their own lives?
All right, so first step, analyze your opponent. Figure out who you're up against. It could be a competitor. It could be a problem you're trying to solve. It could even be like a bad habit you're trying to break. But really study them. Look for their weaknesses. Where are they overconfident? Where are they not paying attention?
So you're saying don't just focus on their strengths. Look for those blind spots.
Exactly. Everyone has weaknesses, even if they don't want to admit it.
Okay, so you found their weaknesses. Now what?
Don't go after them head on. Don't try to fight them where they're strongest. Find a different angle, a more creative approach. Be sneaky. Be unpredictable.
Don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Right. If everyone's doing the same thing, find a different way to do it, a better way.
And be fast. Don't wait around.
The longer you wait, the more time they have to figure out what you're doing and react. You got to hit them hard and fast before they can adjust.
So speed and surprise are super important.
Totally. Catch them off guard.
But it's not just about finding other people's weaknesses, right? What about our own?
Oh yeah, that's super important too. While you're looking for their soft flanks, you got to be doing the same thing for yourself. Ask yourself, where am I weak? Where could someone attack me? Because if you don't figure it out first, someone else will.
That's a good point. You got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, brutal honesty, no sugarcoating. What are your vulnerabilities? And once you know what they are, you can start to fix them. Protect yourself.
So this is like a two-way street. You got to analyze your opponent and yourself.
Exactly. It's a constant process.
And the source material gives us that great example of Blockbuster and Netflix to show what happens when you ignore your own weaknesses.
Yeah, that's a classic case study.
Yeah.
Blockbusters, they were the kings of video rentals, right? They have stores everywhere. Everyone knew their name. But they had this big weakness. Late fees. People hated those late fees.
And they were so focused on making money from those late fees that they didn't see what was coming.
Right. They didn't see that people were getting tired of going to the store. They didn't see the technology was changing. And Netflix, they came along and they were like, okay, no more late fees. We'll mail you the DVDs. You can keep them as long as you want. And people loved it.
And then Netflix went even further with streaming. No more DVDs at all.
Yeah, they just kept innovating. And Blockbuster, they just sat there stuck in their old ways.
Yeah.
They tried to catch up, but it was too late.
And they went bankrupt. It's a sad story, but it's a good lesson.
Yeah, it shows that even if you're at the top, you can't afford to be complacent. You got to keep evolving. You got to stay ahead of the game. Otherwise, someone else will come along and take your place.
So the turning strategy, it's not just about brute force. It's about being smart. It's about being adaptable. It's about finding the path of least resistance.
It's about using your brain, not just your muscles.
So for our listener out there, think about the challenges you're facing. Where are the soft flanks? Where are the weaknesses you can exploit? And don't forget to look at yourself, too. Where are your soft flanks? What can you do to protect yourself?
It's all about strategy. It's about thinking ahead. It's about being one step ahead of the game.
That's some good stuff to think about. We hope this has given you some new ideas and some new ways to approach your challenges. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
And keep those deep dive requests coming. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.